Hi, everyone. I am Stella. I'm a health and fitness coach for women in menopause, and I am the host of this Inspire show. And as you know, I always have guests who can inspire you and from who can learn something new about health, about mindset, about inspiration. Today, I have here Marjorie Nass. Hi, Marjorie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. Um, you are a menopause coach,
Yes.
perimenopause and menopause coach. Um, what is your story? Why did you start that?
Yeah, so my story goes back a while. I was in corporate in New York City, where I'm from, through my mid 30s, and I really found myself burnt out and pretty sick, not doing well emotionally, physically, and so I found yoga. And fortunate enough to find yoga, which helped so much. And what a lot of people don't know is that yoga has a whole wellness science called Ayurveda, and that word simply means knowledge or science of life. And through that, I thrived even more. So I became a yoga and an Ayurveda teacher for many years. I've been doing that since 2001. So it's coming up on 23 years, actually. And what I found, because I was in my mid 30s, late 30s when I started all that, was that I didn't have any perimenopause symptoms. And then I went through menopause and I didn't have symptoms there. And so many of my clients started really struggling. And so what I recognized was that the lifestyle that I'd been following, which I now teach, was really keeping the body in a state of more of out of the stress response
Mm-hmm.
through the work, for example, on nutrition and movement and breathing and mindset, that I set my body up for in a place that it wasn't having these strong symptoms
Mm-hmm.
and reactions like so many women are struggling. So I started specifically teaching women in perimenopause and menopause, and if they were already struggling, those symptoms abated. And for the women that started with me before perimenopause, like me, they didn't really have those experiences. So I
Wow.
started just focusing on those women. My belief is that it's so much more than beyond hormones in terms of finding balance throughout perimenopause and menopause. And I develop what I call the PeriCyle Lift. And that is what I'm sharing with women now.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me what is the difference in the perimenopause and in menopause? What is the is there specific symptoms that it's changing or what do you
Oh,
know about
so
it?
yeah, so what I find is that for so many women, they've started perimenopause and they don't recognize what it is. Um, I think it's changing thanks to people like you, because there's more information about it. A lot of people just know about menopause, and they don't, maybe for some people, they don't know the word menopause. I mean, I've spoken with so many women over the past few years, especially, and they're like already in their mid to late 50s, and they're like, I didn't realize about perimenopause. So the first things that can start to change, and hormones begin changing in women's in the late 30s even. I mean, hormones are already declining, but they really start changing in the late 30s. And that's why so many women are having fertility issues. But one of the first things that women might notice is that their periods are changing. So it's either the length of the period, the length between the periods can lengthen or shorten, or the heaviness of the period themselves. So a lot of women don't connect this. They may think that something's wrong. And of course, you always want to check with your doctor, but that is like a natural thing that starts to happen. Just like in puberty, periods are mostly irregular when
Mm.
we start to get them. So I compare a little bit perimenopause to puberty because things are changing, our bodies are changing, and it's a natural state. And we've medicalized it so much. So I find that for women, they finally recognize that they're in perimenopause when they start getting hot flashes, because those are things
Mm-hmm.
that are identified by perimenopause. And in fact, there's so much of an overlap in what women know, is that they call the whole thing menopause. They call all of their, well, I'm in menopause, and actually they're still having periods. So I find that women are starting to get more tired. They're not sleeping as well in perimenopause. And that is the start of a cascade of symptoms. And there are dozens, if not 100 symptoms that can be caused by perimenopause beyond what are the most common symptoms. And then some women find that their body is changing. Maybe they're holding weight in a different way, or without changing anything, they're starting to gain weight. But the lack of sleep, in my opinion, is behind so much of this. Because if you're not getting sleep, you're going to have brain fog. If you're not getting good sleep, you're going to be gaining weight. If you're not getting good sleep, you're going to be more irritable. And
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to have a libido if you're exhausted. So everything and so
It's
many things, in my
connected.
opinion,
Yeah.
go back to sleep. Yeah. And so menopause is identified as 1 year after a woman's final period. And then the symptoms may continue. They may get worse. Some women have hot flashes for 10 years after menopause. And I don't think that's necessary. I think there's so many things that we can do from a lifestyle perspective, from a habits perspective, and especially how we're handling the pressures of life.
Stress. How we can manage the stress in menopause, because
Yeah,
it's
because
it's it's connecting with everything, I think.
100%. And, for so many women in their 20s and 30s, they, under, especially like, not especially, but all mothers, work, aging parents, all those things. And, we can kind of get away with it through our 20s and 30s. We feel like we're getting away with it, but all of a sudden in our 40s, things are changing. And unless we've adapted to how we're responding to stress, those symptoms are going to get louder. And I like to say that those symptoms are messages from the body that we have to listen to. And for a lot of us, our culture is very much in the mind, we're in the outer world, and we're not as connected with the inner world. And this is for most women. And so they're not really listening to the clues that their body is sending. And they may be ignoring it. I also use another example. It's like, if you have to go to the bathroom, like, how long will you ignore it? I always, when you're driving, we have exits, and some people say rest stop. Oh no, I can wait till the next rest stop to go. Well, that's ignoring your body's messages. The same with
Mm.
when you're hungry. Like, are you hungry and you're not eating? Are you tired and are you not eating? And sorry, are you hungry and not eating? Are you tired and not going to sleep? So all of those things, we've got to listen to those messages. And when we're in the stress response, it's really easy to ignore those things, which is going to exacerbate all of the symptoms.
Yes, because we usually doing things what the society wait for us from us, and we're doing and we are not as important for ourselves, but how should we be?
Exactly. And as women, we are used to putting everyone else first.
Yes.
We're nurturers, we're givers, and that's for most women. So I have taught yoga and wellness retreats for many, many years. And I met a woman, she's become a friend because she lives where I live now. And even in her late 30s, she was taking a week off. And at that time, her children were like 3 and 9. And I'm not saying everybody has to take a week off, but she knew that having that time for herself to do that retreat was going to make her a better mother, because she
Mm-hmm.
was going to be more relaxed. She was going to feel better physically. And those things are all true. Other thing is that she's setting an example for her children.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's generational, right? If we learned
Yes.
from our mothers that we put everybody else first, that's what we're going to do. And if
Mm-hmm.
we look at our mothers who are saying, no, I can't take a day for myself, I can't take a weekend for myself, that's just what they learn. And her daughters have seen, no, this is normal.
Thanks.
Mom goes off and takes a few
Mm-hmm.
herself, and then she comes back, she's rested and refreshed,
Yes.
more fun. And that can be a hard pill to swallow for some women. But if we don't, everything starts catching up with us. And then the messages from the body get louder and louder. So I believe that the sooner that women can start to make changes, small changes, like you don't have to overhaul your lifestyle, but from a perspective that you're staying out of the stress response, responding to stressors in a different way, then we're really going to be able to mitigate and prevent some of the worst symptoms. And so many of the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause can be solved or prevented through lifestyle factors.
Mm-hmm.
So I call it symptom solving, and I call it, mindset mastery, and also a perspective pivot. Because if we expect that perimenopause and menopause are going to be difficult, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If all of your friends are having terrible symptoms, okay, it's great to know that you're not alone, but it can become a place where we're just like commiserating, and it doesn't have to be that way. It may be common, but it's not normal. And if it was just our hormones, everyone around the world, all women around the world would have the same symptoms, but that's not the case. In fact, in Asian cultures, in certain Asian cultures, they don't even have the expression or the word for a hot flash because they don't exist. So if it was just the hormonal changes, it wouldn't matter where somebody lived, right? So we know that the stress factor has so much to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have stress. And I want to just rephrase that. We all have stress, right? It's a natural response when we are in danger. Everyone uses the example of like, the lion is chasing the animal, or we're being chased by a lion. Fight or flight is like all our energy goes into running and moving away. But we're in that state all the time. And this has changed. Like when you're in menopause, most of the average age is 51. So you're older or younger. We remember before smartphones. We remember when there was no email. And there wasn't this constant, dinging and notifications and constant slew of information. We remember that. And things were there wasn't as much that was coming at us from the outside world. So we have to be stewards of our own health and say, this is not good for me. I need to come back to my being of who I am, not just what I'm doing all the time. That we are present with our families, with our friends, and everything is not about what we're doing or the outside world. So talk about being really intentional with the information that you're taking in to help you to handle some of those stresses. If there's something on the news that you're watching at 11 o'clock at night, there is nothing you can do about it. If you're watching it on the news, that can't wait until the morning, because it's just going to interfere with your sleep. And it's not just the amount of sleep, the number of hours you're sleeping, it's the quality of your sleep as well.
Yes.
So in the PeriCyle Lift, I'm helping women to look at how they're handling the stressors of life. How are they responding? How are they reacting? A reaction is a response without breathing. So reaction is like that split second moment that we don't even have time to think. And just taking a deep breath gives our nervous system and our mind the chance to make a different decision. Because when we're lacking oxygen and all of the functions that oxygen gives us, we're not going to be responding from a good place. And that's the reaction. In contrast, if something happens and then we take a deep breath, we can see things from a different perspective. It's a half a second, it's a second, or if you do 2 or 3 deep breaths. And that phrase has been around for a long time. Just take a deep breath. So that is just one of the things. But what I do is I'm really coaching women and supporting them to help them get through this. Information is great. We have it at our fingertips, but just having the information really isn't enough. I recently heard this and I think it's fantastic. If information is all we needed, we'd all be billionaires with 6-packs. Because all the information is there, the internet, all the books, all the shows, but it's that support. It's that support. It's that connection with someone who believes in you, who knows what's possible, and can be there with you every step of the way. So the PeriCyle Lift is really about connecting with yourself deeply and learning strategies that can be easy, that don't have to be complicated, so that everything else in your life is easier. And I've been working with women, and it's like within days they're feeling better. It doesn't have to take a long time, and it can be with your body's natural healing abilities, because our body's meant to thrive. It's designed to move towards healing, not towards anything else. So if that's what's happening in our life, we know we need to look at something within ourselves rather than taking the easy way out, which is so tempting because we want answers right away. But for anything to really work long term, it's got to be consistent changes. And women are living longer. So if we think about from the time of puberty to menopause, it's 30 to 40 years. So if we're in our mid-50s, we have another 30, 40 years ahead of us. So it's like, we want to be prepared for that. We have the opportunity to live better and feel better than we do now. But it has to be a change, and it's well beyond our hormone levels.
Yes, I also always tell to my clients that now in their 50s, 40, late 40s, 50s, they can change everything. They can just see the things from different perspective. And if they start to change something, they will change more and more things. And they can also learn something new, do something new things, can have new goals and achieve them, can have a really a new goals what, let's say they had when they were younger, and they was thinking about something, oh, I would like to do that, but not now. And maybe this is the time we can start something to do what we wanted before, or just want now something new to do, because
Yeah,
as you said, we have 20, 30 years, so we can do with it something really, really good. We can live
exactly.
on a different way.
100%. And it is a choice. I had a client years ago, and she and her husband got married, and obviously both, her parent, their respective sets of parents were similar ages. I think they were in their mid-60s. And I remember my client saying, we could see right there the different directions that their parents were going to go in. That his parents were going to continue to thrive. They were still worked, very involved in different volunteer work, and very interested in culture. And her parents moved They think they moved to a community and they just declined. They weren't very active. They weren't fulfilling a purpose. And that's exactly what happened. So it has to be a decision. And here's the thing. When you're not feeling well, when you're tired, when you can't think straight, when you're having hot flashes, when you're annoyed with your family, it's really hard to see what could be ahead. So when I work with women, the first thing I want to get them to do is start to feel better. Because once they feel physically better and they're more rested, everything seems lighter. And they're like, this is not such a big deal. I can handle this. And the world kind of opens up. But it's hard to be in that place. And, depression has a lot to do with it as well. And depression can be part of perimenopause and menopause due to hormonal changes for sure, but also the exhaustion and also this idea of this change of life. Like, who am I going to be in my 50s and my 60s and my 70s and beyond? What is this going to like if their children are almost in college? That's going to change. And what is that going to mean? And so I think there's an identity shift that has to happen. And it's very difficult in our culture because of the emphasis on youthfulness. And this is again where cultures differ so much, because in the cultures where elders are revered and part of community, it's very different. And they tend to live longer and they live better because they're active, because they're part of social communities that are not just one age. So they're living with grandchildren or great grandchildren, or they're around them. And in our culture, that's often not the case. People have moved to different cities, they're all over the country, and there can be some isolation that really affects women as well.
We can always change something. Because
100%.
the world is changing, there is always new things, so we can always try new things.
That's why the work you're doing to get this information out there is so important. The women that sometimes women I'll speak with are in their 70s and they're like, I didn't know that there were other things that I could do. They think that the only approach they can take is the medical approach, which for some women is definitely very, very helpful and something that's needed. Some women, if they're just doing that, they could go so much further. They could feel so much better if they were also implementing some of these changes and some of these shifts, mindset shifts and physical shifts as well, that they could take to, help them to thrive for that next phase or era of their life. I've started calling it an era of their life.
And so you are helping on holistic way on with Ayurveda?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I do. So my background and how I healed was through yoga, and yoga can change. It's very different depending on who you work with. So right now, for a lot of women, their body is so stressed that they don't need physical effort. They don't need so much physical effort. That's because that actually can cause stress in the body if you're exercising too hard. So what's great about yoga is it helps settle the nervous system, certain kinds of yoga. And along with that is the breath work. The breath is the most powerful thing that we can do to change the pressure, how we handle pressure in our life. Whether it's that split second, I work with women on cooling breaths for when they're having a hot flash or a night sweat. There are ways to actually cool the body through the breath. And the Ayurveda that I incorporate is very simple. Ayurveda can get very, very, very complicated and very narrow based on, and of course, each woman is different and it has to be customized. But those are some granule things. I talk about the rhythms. So Ayurveda is very much in line with nature. What are the daily rhythms and the daily routines? The body likes having a routine. It likes to know when we're going to be eating, when we're going to be sleeping. And for those of you who have children, you created a bedtime routine for your child, and that's a great way to help them go to sleep, is to have a bath and a story and all of those things. And we often have gotten away from that. Now we have the phones and the computers that takes us away from that as well. So to have a real routine throughout the day, that's also, and I say a good night's sleep starts in the morning. So having that routine throughout the day, that's part of Ayurveda, and also seasonal rhythms, because we're going to do things differently in the summer than we are in the winter, whether you're in a climate that's extremely cold and extremely hot or a more moderate climate. There are still changes that we can make like that. And in Ayurveda, digestion is everything. So we look a lot at digestion, and not just what we're eating, but other aspects of how we're eating, where we're eating, when we're eating, and even with whom we're eating, because all of those things are a part of it. Someone can be eating the most perfectly proportioned, organic, straight from the farm meal, but if they're under pressure, if they're not breathing, if they're eating at the wrong time, or they're having a difficult conversation, it does not matter, because the body is not going to absorb, and assimilate that food. And so
Wow.
for a lot, so for a lot of women, they're not taking the time to sit down and eat, and it's causing issues in the body through digestion and through some digestion is a big issue in perimenopause and menopause as well. So you asked how I handle those. So all of that is in the work that I do. All of that is in the PeriCyle method that I created. And I just love working with women and seeing the changes that they can make that are not big. And so many women will say, well, I kind of knew that, but I didn't really believe it. Or they were doing something that was out of sequence. A lot of it is the sequence, and sequencing is big in yoga and it's big in Ayurveda. What is the order that you're doing things? And having someone by your side to help on a day-by-day basis is really, really valuable. Because again, you can be looking at a book, but there are going to be things that get in the way. And so coming back to the reasons why you want to feel good, and I didn't mention that earlier. Why is it important for you to be healthy? Why is it important for you to be happy? Well, when we think about, we talked about this earlier, women not putting themselves first. So when we don't put ourselves first, everybody around us suffers. If we're not feeling well, heaven forbid we get sick, who's going to suffer? Our family. And for families and loved ones to understand that taking time for ourselves is actually benefiting them and their lives, that can be a game changer. It's a perspective shift. And again, what we're doing is a model for everyone. So for women who have teenage or younger daughters or older daughters, to say, this is what I need to do so I can be here for you. That gives those women the opportunity and the model to say, that's what I can do for my family as well. So there's really a ripple effect to be an example of a healthy, vibrant woman who's sharp, who's working or in community or whatever, who's happy, who's, joyful. That is really a gift to them, and having a model in the community, in the world, that this is what's possible. That can be a game changer.
Yes, really. I said that I want to make example to my daughters to see that yes, we can live differently, not like our grandmothers.
Exactly, exactly. When I think of my grandmothers, even when they were in their mid to late 60s, they seemed so old. And I'm turning 60 next month. So I think about
How
them.
much?
60, 60.
60?
Yeah.
You're kidding. You look so good.
Thank you very much. So anyway, like we couldn't, like we never went out with with my grandparents. Like we would just go visit and like sit in their apartment. I hated it. It was so boring, as a little girl. And I'm the youngest, so they were older than other people. Well, I'm just making generalizations. Anyway, so they would just like sit around, and even like how they would dress, like grandparents like in the 60s and 70s, they wore
Yes.
like house coats. Do you remember those house coats? Like it's not even a robe, it's like this baggy, it's almost like a
Yeah.
doctor's coat, but it's baggy. And it was like, this is, and they were not that older than I am right now. So it's just, it
But
doesn't
it's a
have to be
big
that way.
difference.
Yeah. And it was a different culture. It was a different time. And we are grateful for the technology that we have and the knowledge that we have right now, but also seeing that it's possible. So I was lucky enough to have my parents till they were over 90. And they were really physically active and traveling into their late 80s. And that's possible too, but it's about taking care of yourself and having that interest in the world and interest in your life as well.
Yes. I want that to be in my I'm 55, in my 70s and 80s to be so active. I just want to continue with this what I know,
Yeah.
and I want to learn always new things. I will check Ayurveda.
Yeah.
I didn't yet, so
I was looking at
I
your,
yeah. So yeah. I wrote a book about what I learned from the doctors
uh-huh.
about menopause, about healthy aging, about how can we change our perspective, and about everything a little, and it's worked for me and for my clients, but I always want to learn something new.
And I
So
think that's key. And I'm thrilled for that. And I think that's also key because we don't know what we don't know. And one of the things about aging is that people can get very stuck in their ways and they don't want to try anything new. And this is true in the medical profession too. It's like some doctors have practiced the same way for 20 years, 30 years, and they don't incorporate anything new. And
mhm.
that kind of philosophy is unfortunately not serving us. So there's always new information. There's always ways to find something else, have a different opinion, and decide what's right for you. So I really stand for women's agency, that they can decide the route that they want to go and to take a stand for themselves. And I think as we get older, I think that gets easier in some ways. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it that way. It's easier to say no, and it's easier to care less about what people think. That's what I believe.
You look so good. Good. You have 60. I thought you were 45 maybe.
Well, I do appreciate that. And I practice what I preach 100%. So I I feel like I can be a role model and a mentor to women, and I'm showing up in the way that I know works.
You are the example, you know,
Yeah,
for them. Yeah.
I try to be. And of course, I'm not perfect. Nobody is, but
Nobody's.
we're all doing our best. We're all doing our best.
Yeah.
I was looking
Um,
at your, sorry, go ahead.
oh, just say.
No, I was just gonna say, I was looking at your Instagram and your YouTube and all the physicality that you have is just amazing. And it is an example, like, getting older does not mean being able to not do physical things. I especially appreciated your animal walking. I do that all the time. I crawl
Yes.
up stairs and I have a
Uh-huh.
puppy. So I crawl up the stairs and I crawl along the
It's
floor with
so
him.
good
Great. So good.
for every muscle. So
Yeah.
it's like you were in gym 1 hour maybe.
Totally, totally.
It's the same. So I really really like that moves and everything. My workouts are mix of yoga and Pilates and
Uh-huh.
body weight training and balance training, animal moves and everything from everything a little because know my every muscle. I I have to train my every muscle. This
Yeah,
is the best thing.
yeah. If I could add one more thing, I know we're getting to the end of our conversation. I call it movement because exercise for me kind of means like it's like a special time. I'm going to exercise, and movement is like something we can do constantly. So I'm very much about moving often, getting up. When we get up and we move, it actually changes our nervous system so that we're going to think better. So the more we're sitting and getting drawn into the computer, our brain actually will slow down. So getting up, just
Mm.
taking a 2-minute walk can be around, the house or the apartment, shaking a little bit, looking up at the sky. So I'm very much a fan of little movement breaks and movement snacks.
It's good
And they
every two
really
hours. I
feel
always stand up and I do squats or something,
yeah,
boxing or something.
yeah.
I really need it. Yeah. Um, we have 3 minutes. So I have two questions. What would you, if you could go back in time and you could give advice to yourself, to your younger self, what would you say?
I would say it doesn't matter what anybody thinks. Nobody's going to remember anyway. And living on the basis of what others are going to think is exhausting and it's not nourishing you. I would coach her to have more confidence and to believe in herself and how special she really is.
Nice. And what is your message to my listener?
My message to your listeners is that it's never too late. It doesn't matter where you are in your health journey, if you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, beyond. There are always changes, small, simple changes that you can make that will support your health and your well-being. And I mean physically, emotionally, and mentally. And it doesn't have to be complicated. And it's well beyond your hormone changes.
It's great. Yes. Thank you so much. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Me too. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you and to reach your audience. I really appreciate it, Stella.
Thank you so much. I hope you will come again.
I'd be delighted. I would be delighted. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.